I'm going to begin, Bill, by asking, I mean, Kildare is more than your kind of typical detective. It's a very layered role. It must have been a real kind of joy to get your teeth stuck into this part.
Yeah, it was a great role, and I've waited a long time to be a detective anyway. I like the whole genre of this film, and he's unexpected. So the idea was hopefully to avoid cliché.
But do you find, though, when you do play a detective, your interpretation of the role is sometimes informed by cinema as opposed to real life, just because it's such a cinematic kind of creation?
Yeah, exactly. Particularly in the genre world. You often find that performances actually is like historical performances, or, if you're playing an historical character, that actually what you're referencing is another movie, as you say. Not, obviously you can't reference the period if it's, because no one was there and there's no footage. So it becomes, you observe, or you try not to observe, the conventions that have developed over the years in movies.
I mean, the viewer goes on such a journey with this. We're sort of desperately trying to figure out who the Golem is. I mean, do you recall a similar experience when you first read the screenplay? Were you kind of left to sort of every page?
Yeah, and I like, there's a whopping great twist at the end, so which I didn't get when I read it. And it was obvious, it's a really cracking script from a very good book.
And because much of the brilliance does come down to Jane Goldman with this movie. I mean, when you find out she's behind the screenplay, it's almost a stamp of approval at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. She was terrific.
And did you read Ackroyd's original text? Because I know Kildare wasn't as much of a big role in that one.
No, he's barely in it. He's been enlarged for movie purposes. But I didn't read the book before we started. I often don't. I've done a few adaptations of books lately, and to be honest, it's best to read the book later, which I did, and not prior to shooting, because there's things in it that you'll regret are not in the script. It's not the movie. It's got nothing. You know what I mean? It's the script is the movie, so I keep it simple.
I mean, it does feel like a sort of slightly different role for you. I mean, usually there is room for some kind of room for comedy in a sense. I mean, even like They're Fine, for example, it's still a drama, but your character still has that kind of just space to sort of be quite comedic. But in this, that isn't really the case at all. Was that quite kind of nice, doing something just a little bit different?
Well, I am, I've played, I've probably played more straight roles than I have comic ones. But it's always nice to, have a couple of jokes up your sleeve because you feel safer. But I'm perfectly happy playing a straight role.
And I've become sort of fascinated by Dan Leno since watching this, just sort of reading his stuff. I mean, is it someone you knew much about already, or was this a bit of a learning curve? I
knew a couple of things about him. I knew that he was, he was a huge star. I think, my grandmother probably spoke about him. He was the biggest music hall star of the time. So I was aware. I'd never seen it, and I'd seen pictures of him, but I'd never seen it. Obviously, you can't see his act, but I was aware of him.
And I was on the set and I saw the music hall, and I was queuing up for the food at lunchtime. Everyone dressed up in kind of Victorian attire, and it really felt like I'd almost come from the future and just sort of turned up in a pair of trainers into this kind of set. That must help immeasurably when you're an actor, when you've got these sets which were incredible as well, and then all the people in costumes. Just getting into that kind of headspace must be that little bit easier when that's the case.
Yeah, it helps enormously. The costume particularly, and the sets, and it is. I was saying earlier that, you walk on a set that's that intricate and that carefully observed and that brilliant, and it's kind of humbling because you realise the amount of work that's gone into it before you even turn up, and then you feel encouraged, you better be good, because these people are obviously serious.
And I mean, the kind of intricacies of the set is almost emblematic, I think, of Juan Carlos Medina's kind of quite meticulous approach to this material. I mean, does that extend to his work on set? He seems like he had a very distinctive vision.
Yeah, he had a very, very particular way in which he wanted the film to look, and how he wanted the performances expressed.
And my final question is just about the bookshop, which is next up. How does Mr. Brundish fit into that narrative?
Well, Mr. Brundish is a supporter. Emily Mortimer, the wonderful Emily Mortimer, plays the lead. Somebody who tries to open a bookshop in a hostile community. Mr. Brundish represents her greatest ally, and Isabel Coixet, the distinguished Spanish director, not only adapted the book from Penelope Fitzgerald's novel, but also, and not only directed it, but also operated the camera, which was kind of glamorous. And she also makes olive oil. She has her own olive oil factory.
Have you got any at home?
I have. She gave me 3 bottles. And you get a Barcelona shirt with your name on the back. I mean, tell me about it.
You want to sign up to our next project as well?
Yeah, I'm very
She might
happy.
give you some balsamic vinegar or something.
Well, yeah, she's great.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey,